Hello, this is Hailey from We Learn to Share, and in this video I'm going to be walking you through one of the most challenging sections in the SAT reading test, which is the history section. Now, I know that a lot of people lose marks on this section mainly because the wording tends to be a little outdated and also the content itself is not something that you're usually familiar with. So in this lecture, I hope to give you some tips and techniques on how to fully get a grasp on how to solve these kinds of sections in the real SAT so that you don't lose marks. The test that I'll be solving today is the practice test 7, and you can find it on the official College Board website, so there won't be an attachment on this video. I might include a link, I'm not sure, but you can access it for free on the official website, so please do so, and just keep this video on as you're solving the history section so that you can get some help. And just before we begin, a disclaimer that this is not a history lecture, so it won't be very focused on the content of the passage, but rather on the tips and techniques that I want to share with you when solving SAT reading questions, especially the history section. So let's just begin. This passage, as you can see, is you need to know that this part, the interface, is very important in solving these kinds of actually for all SAT reading questions, because it gives you some very important information that you might use later on in your questions, and it's just helpful to know a lot more about the text that you're actually going to solve questions on. So here it says that passage 1 is adapted from Alexis de Tocqueville, Democracy in America, Volume 2, so we can get a grasp of what it's actually talking about. And passage 2 is about the enfranchisement of women, so we can see, oh, this passage is about the rights of women, probably, because there are some areas that SAT history, the SAT history section likes to include, such as women's rights and enfranchisement and suffrage, civil rights, so slavery, and rights of Black Americans, etc. So these areas are, if you do US history for your APs, that'll be something that you've covered in class, so it'll be a bit easier for you. But for people who do not take AP US history, for me, because I take IGCSE history and I don't take APs at all, or US history, it's okay because you can just read the passage and it tells you everything that you need to know. So I'm not going to read the passage with you, you can do that in your own time, but basically the passage 1 and 2 are talking about similar things, but they have slightly different perceptions of how they view women's rights, democracy, etc. So just going on to the first question, which is 32. As used in line 9, raise most nearly means. So we should go back to passage 1, and in 9c, here it says, will raise woman and make her more and more the equal of man. Here we can see, just isolate this sentence for a moment, and saying that will raise woman and make her more and more the equal of the man, when there's implications in the previous sentence that bring near to the same level the father and son, the master and servant. It's implying that the son is usually in a lower class than the position than the father, and the servant clearly is in the lower position than the master, and it's saying that it's basically the same thing with men and women, and they're saying that woman needs to be raised to be the equal of the man. So basically raised, this is a kind of easy question, but it means elevate, as my description kind of already shows. So nurture is not exactly the word we would use, because nurture usually means like to care for and kind of, yeah, and it's not the connotations that we're looking for right now. And cultivate, it's more for like crops, and it's not the very good ideal choice to make in this question. And increase, again, increase one's position, it does make sense, but here we have a very better word for elevate, which basically means bring up to the same level. It literally has the connotations of raising in terms of level or in terms of height. So D seems like the most ideal choice in this question. So we should, when we're facing questions like this is a fairly easy one, but when we face questions like this and the words are very vague or they're very similar in meaning, so we're not sure which one to choose, we should basically isolate the sentence that the word is in, and then just pretend like the word doesn't exist and put in each and really think about the meanings behind each one, like I said. For instance, increased does have connotations of pulling up, but here it's clear that elevate has a more distinct and clear meaning that's sufficient to this question. So for question 33, in passage 1, Tocqueville, I don't even know how to pronounce his name, implies that the treatment of men and women as identical in nature would have which consequence? Now for these questions, I recommend when you get the paper at the first place, you find these questions where two questions are linked. For example, it says which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question, so these two questions are linked. I would put like a symbol on them so that we can just see them at first glance and say that, oh, this question is in addition to this one, so I should probably look at the second one first, which actually gives me the examples and gives me the lines in the passage. And let's just do that right now for this passage. So 36 and 37, these are also linked together. And yeah, I think that's all for this one. So we're going to look at 34 first because it'll give us a clear idea of where we should look at in the passage. So we're trying to find a line that implies that the treatment of men and women as identical in nature would have a consequence, and we need to identify a line that kind of shows that consequence. So we're going to look at lines 15 to 18 first, which is over here. There are people in Europe who, confounding together the different characteristics of the sexes, would make of man and woman beings not only equal but alike. That's 15 to 18. But here I would say that this is kind of like a trap, because a lot of people may choose this choice because it's clearly saying that people confound together the different characteristics of the sexes, which make man and woman beings not only equal but alike. But here it says it's directly asking for the consequence. Although this states that people do confound the two sexes and kind of associate them in nature, it's not saying the exact consequences. So this is a trick. It has implications of the question itself. It does allude to the question itself, but it doesn't give us a direct answer to what it's actually asking for. So we're gonna cross that out for now. And they to rights from 18 to 20, here they would give to both the same functions, impose on both the same duties, and grant to both the same rights. Here again, it's not actually answering our question on the consequences of thinking in such a way. It's just extending onto the explanation of how people tend to think that the two sexes are alike in nature. Again, it's not answering our question, so we're gonna take that away from our choices from now. Lines 22 to 24 says that it may to degrade it. So it may readily be conceived that by thus attempting to make one sex equal to another, both are degraded. And this, let me just highlight that here. This is a better choice than the previous two, because it says it may readily be conceived, and that by thus attempting to make one sex equal to another, this is basically implying that by thinking of them of the same nature, both are degraded. This is the consequence, and it directly outlines the cause and effect of what the question is asking for. So this is a very good answer, so we're going to keep this for now, but we're still going to look at the last choice, 27 to 29, which is, it is not thus that the Americans understand the species of democratic equality which may be established between the sexes. Yeah, that's the last choice, and we're going to look at it isolated for a moment. And here, it's not exactly a good choice, because if you see here, it is not thus that the Americans understand the species of democratic equality which may be established between the sexes. It's not answering our question again. So you should basically note that when looking at these lines, looking at these choices, you should note that it's you should see if it's directly answering the question, because it may allude to the question. It may have some aspect of the question inside the line, but you should not be tricked by it, because you should always be looking for the exact and direct answer to the question that it's implying. And it will be, just know that it will be paraphrased, so you need to keep in mind the actual meaning behind the question and the answer and the lines itself. So here we've established that D is not true, so C will be the answer. And going back to 33, what C implies, we're going to go back to it for a moment. It basically says that by attempting to make one sex equal to another, both are degraded. Now, SAT vocabulary plays a big part here. Degraded, it basically means like being belittled, being kind of, well, the opposite of elevated, I guess. Being treated as if they are not of the prestige, I guess. They're not of the level that they are at. And in 33, if we're looking for such connotations, A, neither sex would feel oppressed. This is not exact. This is actually has a positive connotation, so it is not what we're looking for. B, both sexes would be greatly harmed. Here, greatly harmed is a good substitute for degraded, so we're definitely going to keep that. And for C, men would try to reclaim their lost authority. There's nothing in that sentence that talks about men or are them reclaiming their lost authority, so be careful. Just because it looks like it might be the answer and it looks elaborate, it is not always the answer. And choice D, men and women would have privileges they do not need. Again, this does have negative connotations, but this is too specific to be encompassed inside the one word of degraded, so B would be the best choice in this question. 35, another vocabulary question. As used in line 53, dominion most nearly means. To be honest, for these vocabulary questions, the best way to prepare for these are just basically looking at a lot of vocab, memorizing a lot of them, and kind of keeping in mind the connotations and implications that each one has, because every word does not have just one meaning. It has a lot of meanings that can be implied in various different sentence forms. Here, again, dominion usually means like control or having a grasp over. And here it does have ownership. It does have a connotation of control, but if you look at the sentence, which is over here, sorry, where is it? Yeah, instead of the dominion of the strongest, would you say dominion, ownership, rightfully substitutes dominion in this question? Instead of the ownership of the strongest, ownership is usually used for like the physical ownership of a certain object, but here, the dominion of the strongest, it doesn't exactly fit the right criteria, so we're going to get C away from our choices. And territory, again, if you put it into the sentence, instead of the territory of the strongest, that has a completely different meaning, so we're gonna take that off as well. And we're left with omnipotence and supremacy. If we put omnipotence here, instead of the omnipotence of the strongest, and instead of the supremacy of the strongest, here is just a matter of common sense, I guess. Omnipotence of the strongest and supremacy of the strongest. Which one fits the sentence more? Better. Omnipotence basically means like powerful in a very strong way, almost all-encompassing power. But here it's more of a comparison of the strongest and its counterpart, not strong, something that's not strong. Less strong than it, then we would say supremacy is better because it's a clear comparative language that clearly compares two subjects from each other. But omnipotence is just more of describing one thing that's powerful and has a lot of potence, but it's not exactly comparative of two words. So we're gonna say that supremacy is the best choice. I agree that some of you may think that omnipotence is a good choice, and some of you may even think that ownership is a good choice, but in the SATs, you need to look clearly and very specifically into the sentence and into the word that's incorporated in the sentence and see and think, what exactly is the sentence trying to say? What point is the sentence trying to make? Because as I showed here, this sentence is trying to make like a comparison of the stronger, which here is portrayed as men, and the less strong, which here are portrayed as women. So in order to make that point of comparison, the word supremacy is the better choice. So yeah, B is the answer for question 35. And we're going to look at 36 and 37 together because they are I guess they're connected, as was 33 and 34. So here again, we're going to look at 37 first. Which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question? The previous question is, we're trying to find sentence that implies that Mill strongly suggests that gender roles are resistant to change because they and the reason needs to be incorporated in the line. So we're going to look at each line. So for A, lines 43 to 44, as society basis, it's, here. As society was constituted until the last few generations, inequality was at its very basis. Association grounded on equal rights scarcely... Did I pass? Yeah, sorry, it's until basis. So here, we're going to isolate it. And does it show us why Mill strongly suggests that gender roles are resistant to change? Well, let's see. No, it just says that inequality was its very basis. Again, it just states the obvious fact that the question does imply, but it doesn't give us a direct answer to why it is the case. So we're going to take A off here. And 46 to 49, two persons could hardly cooperate in anything or meet in any amicable relation without the laws appointing that one of them should be the superior of the other. Here, again, it's outlining the situation which the question implies. But again, it's saying that this is a situation, men and women are treated in such a way, they can cooperate, but still it's not telling us the reason for why such a tradition and why such circumstances are not improving over the past over years and not changing. So 46 and 49 are also not sufficient. And C, 58 to 61. Here. In proportion to the strength of a feeling as a tenacity with which it clings to the forms and circumstances with which it has been even accidentally become associated. Here it's saying in proportion to the strength of a feeling, so it's saying the feeling of difference between men and women is the tenacity with which it clings to, and the forms of circumstances with which it has even accidentally become associated. Here, it's important. It's not explicitly stating the reason, but it's clearly saying that with the discrimination, shall we say, or the lack of cooperation, and with that feeling of difference between men and women, there is a tenacity, this is an important word in the sentence, tenacity with which it clings to the forms and circumstances, even accidentally become associated. So it's basically saying that there are some forms and circumstances and just tradition in society that it has been associated with over the past few years, with which it clings to. So it's kind of too associated to the extent that people regard it as a part of the tradition, they regard it as a part of their daily lives. So that's why it's not easily, it's not subject to easy change. So here we'll definitely keep this one. And looking at 36, from what I said, we can see that it's very connected to B, so we're gonna mark it like this. Before in the actual SAT exams, this method is what I use. So when with questions that are associated like 36 and 37, I will look at the choices for the lines first and then see which two answers for each question align with each other or associated with each other, and kind of draw this sort of line between them so that I can clearly see which ones are connected together. So we'll still look at D, line 67 to 69, which is over here. Employments then. Employments will fall into the hands of those men or women who are found by experience to be most capable of worthily exercising them. We're gonna isolate it like this. I need to go back and forth a lot of times. And here it's talking about something completely different from what we want to hear from the question itself. So we're going to disregard this as well. So basically, the answers are C for 37 and B for 36. Now we'll move on to question 38. Both authors would most likely agree that the changes in gender roles that they describe would be, we're going to look at A first, part of a broad social shift towards greater equality. We're going to look at the two passages to see if it mentions something like that, And in passage 1, we can see here it literally talks about social changes. I'll use red to make it more visible. And it says that I believe that the social changes will bring nearer to the same level that the father and son, the master and servant, the superiors and inferiors, generally speaking, will raise woman and make her more and more the equal of man. But here, more than ever, I feel necessary to make it myself yeah, this from now here on, it's not talking about what we care about at this moment. And this sentence basically says that the social changes which will bring near, and it gives a bunch of examples of different social levels and different social classes and positions, and it's basically saying that with the resolvement of inequality between man and woman, there will come a broader sense of equality in the sense of lots of other forms of inequality that are visible in society, such as, for instance, the father and son, or the master and servant, and superiors and inferiors. So it's basically explicitly saying that it will be part of a broad social shift towards greater equality. So passage 1 clearly states this. Let's see if passage 2 agrees. So here in the first paragraph, again, passage 2 is talking in a broad sense. It's basically saying in the first half that society was based on very unequal rights and unequal, basically equality was not visible in society between any two persons. And in the second half, it's saying that mankind has outgrown this state. Here's a positive connotation that it's actually moving towards equality. And all things now tend to substitute the general principle of human relations, a just equality, instead of the dominion of the strongest. But of all relations, that between man and woman, being the nearest and most intimate, and connected with the greatest number of strong emotions, was sure to be the last to throw off the old rule and receive the new. Throw off the old rule and receive the new basically means throw off that societal status of inequality and move towards equality. And it's saying that man and woman, the inequality between man and woman, was the last to be resolved and the hardest to be resolved. So it's basically saying that if that is resolved, society will clearly be able to move towards that path towards equality. So basically it's saying, again, that it's part of a broad social shift towards greater equality. We can't look at the other examples, other choices, because we're short on time. So as long as we understand that why A is the answer, I think this question is good for now. But if you have any questions on why the other answer choices are not sufficient, please leave a comment and I will explain to you individually. And moving on to question 39. Tocqueville in passage 1 would most likely characterize the position taken by Mill in lines 65 to 69 in passage 2, led to them as. So we're going to look at 65 to 62. And yeah, 65 here, it says, let every occupation be open to all, without favor or disencouragement to any. And employments will fall into the hands of those men or women who are found by experience to be most capable of worthily exercising them. We should understand what this means. It basically means that with the equality of man and woman, there will be equal job opportunities and equal opportunities for men and women equally, and will only be discriminated by their experience or skills thereof. However, passage 1, we should remember, but if we don't remember, you can just always skim through it again to find that it does not agree with this stance, and it basically says that men and women are, although they should be equal, they are different for a reason. They are different in nature, so that they should not be regarded as equal in terms of giving employment or being treated as the fundamental nature of their human beings. So it's seen over here, and it's saying there are people in Europe who think that, and they would give to both the same functions, impose on both the same duties, and grant to both the same rights. They would mix all things. Their occupations here, it's a direct contrast, conflicting attitude from the other from passage 2, saying that they should be given the same occupation opportunities, and their pleasures, their business. It may readily be conceived, and by thus attempting to make one equal to another, both are degraded. So basically, it's saying that it's not healthy, it's not something that we want to do, giving equal occupations and equal opportunities to both man and woman. So here, we should see the choices. We'll look at A first. Less radical about gender roles than it might initially seem. It's not directly commenting on passage 1 itself, so we're not going to think about that. And and choice B, persuasive in the abstract but difficult to implement in practice. It's saying that it doesn't want it at all. It's not worrying about whether it will be feasible and whether it will be easy to implement, so this is not the case as well. C, ill-advised but consistent with the view held by some other advocates of gender equality. See, this is exactly a very ideal paraphrasing of what we just read in passage 2, saying that it will degrade it, so it's ill-advised. He doesn't advise acting in the way, and he doesn't advise society going in that direction, but it is consistent with, as it says here, people in Europe who combine together the different characteristics of the sexes. So basically it's saying that these some other advocates are basically talking about the European people that think that occupation opportunities and for men and women should be equal. So basically this is a perfect paraphrasing of the line that we read in passage 1. So this would be the answer. And passage D, answer choice D, compatible with economic progress in the United States but not in Europe. This does seem like it might be the answer to someone who has not read the passage at all. However, it is not talking about anything that passage 1 has mentioned, and thus this is not the answer. So question 40. Which choice best describes the ways that the two authors conceive of the individual's proper position in society? Let's just read. These are very long answers, so we're short on time, so we won't read into all of them, but we'll look at A first. Tocqueville believes that an individual's position should be defined in important ways by the individual's sex, while Mill believes that an individual's ability should be the determining factor. Just having solved question 39, we should know that this is the answer just by looking at choice A, because see, it's saying define in important ways by that individual's sex, basically saying that opportunities and occupations should be decided upon that whether that person is a man or a woman, because they are intrinsically different in nature, as passage 1 strongly advocates. And Mill believes that an individual's ability should be the determining factor, as we looked at in question 39. Mill says that an individual's activities, experience, and skills should be the deciding factor, and not whether that person is a man or a woman in deciding whether that person gets the opportunity or not. So basically A is the answer. The other ones, again, if you have any questions, please leave a comment. And for the last question, 41, based on passage 2, Mill would most likely say that the application of this great principle of political economy to gender roles has which effect? So lines 38 to 39, we're going to go back there. 38 to 39. So it's over here. Sorry. The Americans, is this the right one? Yeah, the great principle of economy. Yeah, the Americans have applied to the sexes the great principle of political economy, which governs the manufactures of our age by carefully dividing the duties of man from those of woman, in order that the great work of society may be the better carried on. It's basically an extension of passage 1's stance that opportunities and occupations should be divided according to man and woman's gender. And Mill, passage 2, again says that this should not be the case. Equality and equal rights and equal opportunities and occupations should be given to all males and women. And here it's basically saying that it prevents many men and women from developing from their full potential. And yeah, I just went straight to the answer now because I'm short of time, but you should know why. Because it prevents many men and women from developing to their full potential. We're going to look back at Mill's argument in passage 2 about ability. So, there need be no fear that women will take out the hands of man at any occupation which men perform better than they, and each individual will prove his or her capacities in the only way in which capacities can be proved, by trial. So it's saying that we will only know whether men or women will be good at the task if we let them carry it out first and see whether their capabilities stand. So it's saying that basically, if this is not the case, their capabilities will not even be able to be projected in society. They won't be able to be proven. So it's basically saying that it prevents men and women from developing from their full potential because of their gender, and because the equal rights and opportunities are not given to each gender. So the answer for question 41 would be A. For these answer choices, again, if you have questions, please leave comments below. So we have very hastily, and I'm not sure if effectively, looked at the history passage of SAT Practice Test 7. Again, you can find it in the official College Board website. If you have any questions, not even the last few questions, but any questions about any of the content and any of the things that we've discussed in this lecture, please leave a comment below. And I guess history section, it is challenging, but once you get the hang of it, like with any other SAT section, I'm sure that you'll be able to ace it and get all the questions right, because it's that easy. SAT is basically learning the strategies and learning how to effectively solve each question in under time conditions so that you can get the best outcome and the best scores for your SATs. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in my next lecture. Thank you.